Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. Hey, if you got a kid, if you know somebody who's got a kid, if you care about education, grab them right now and watch this program. We're going to detail several options that you want to check out. One of which is blended learning. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But first, the idea of tax credits to give your kids more choice from the Independence Institute. Pam Benigno, who runs our education center. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, John.
All right. Colorado's got a lot of different choices in education, so many more so than we did just a while ago. In fact, we just celebrated 20 years since Roy Romer signed the bill giving us charter schools, and now 13% of all kids in Colorado are going to some type of charter school. People in Colorado seem to like choice.
That's right. They love choice. We have open enrollment. As you mentioned, there's charter schools, there's home schools. Kids can go to a private school, but sometimes there's an issue with that, and that's money.
My kids can't go to a private school. I don't have the ability to pay for it. That's the one area that really there's very little choice in Colorado. If you have the money to send your kid to a private school, you can, but if you're a working family, you really can't. Am I wrong on that?
Unless the children are able to get scholarships. And there's various ways to do that, which we'll talk about. But let's mention quickly, too, Douglas County School District. They, as a school board, actually adopted a school voucher program, a type of scholarship program, but that's tied up in court right now. But if that one is allowed by the courts, what about the rest of the state? We need some extra things for kids.
I mean, I think about where we're here in downtown Denver, and DPS has some challenges off and on. They're doing better all the time, but still there people might want an alternative. If they can go out to some private organization and ask for a little help. They can say, hey, can you give us some money? The government doesn't make any loan money or give any scholarships, but there are some private individuals that do. Do I have that part right?
Yes, you do. But I think it's important everybody know that as far as how kids are doing in Colorado, they're not doing too bad in some ways, but our viewers might be shocked to find out that 1 out of 4 third graders are not reading at third grade level. That's concerning. 50% of the 8th graders are not proficient in the areas of math and science. There's still some problems there. And when you look at the schools in Aurora, actually there's schools all over the state that are still having problems. Denver's doing great, but they still have areas, pockets, where their schools aren't doing as well as they need to. So these families really would benefit, especially low-income families, from a scholarship. And there are scholarship organizations already in Colorado. We have several, probably 4 or 5. And they provide help to parents, tuition assistance, so that their children can go to a private school. So that scholarship might be, well, maybe $3,000 that really can make a difference for a family.
It's really no different than a scholarship when your kid goes to college and you've got this large tuition bill. You go out searching around, and sometimes there are scholarships from different groups, different organizations, different philanthropic groups. There are ways to do that right now if you can find an organization that happens to have enough money to give a scholarship. Talk about a couple of those. How do they work? If somebody's looking at a private school for their kid, they don't have the money, there are a couple of options, not many, and these are all private philanthropic organizations. Name a couple so we have an idea.
Yeah, ACE Scholarship, Challenge Foundation, Parents Challenge down in Colorado Springs, Seeds of Hope, which is a Catholic charities organization. So all of these organizations provide low-income students with some help, but they have to turn away kids. ACE has turned away thousands of kids because they don't have enough donations.
So first of all, this is not funded by the government, these scholarships. This means that a group of people all donate money, and if there's enough money, they give out scholarships. I mean, and we see this in 4-H sometimes does a scholarship, or the Rotary Foundation, or all those other groups. Here, these are for K-12 kids, but they can only give how much money they get. So depending on how people feel about donating to them, that's how many kids can go to a different school, right?
Exactly. And so we need incentives in our state that will encourage people to donate more money. And that's where we talk about a tax scholarship, a tax credit for a scholarship donation.
Right. And we do this in all sorts of areas. We try to give people some sort of incentive to give to charity, some sort of incentive to help people who have less than they do, and to do it privately is a wonderful way of doing it. These students who are turned down, you say thousands of them. So there are thousands of kids in Colorado whose parents want to take them to a better school, a different school, a school that fits their kid better, but there's only so much to go around. So you either have a lottery or it's first in, first serve. We have to find a way to get more money into these organizations.
Yes, that's right. Because right now, if I give to, let's say, a scholarship, I get a tax deduction, just like when I give to any charity, including the Independence Institute. If somebody donates, they get a tax deduction on their taxes. And a tax deduction helps to lower your taxable income. But what would really incentivize giving would be if people could get a tax credit. And I was just looking at the Colorado income tax booklet right here, and there's a whole page of tax credits that people can
help me understand this, because I get the idea of tax deductions. When it's getting close to April 15th, I run around, try to find every receipt for every charity that I gave $5 to, and I can deduct that from the amount of money I get taxed on. What's the difference between that and a tax credit?
Well, after you have already figured your taxes and that tax deduction helped lower that taxable amount. So let's say at the end, and we're talking about Colorado state taxes, let's say you owe $4,000. Well, if we had a tax credit program for donations to scholarships in Colorado and you donated $2,000 to one of the scholarship organizations, then you could take $2,000 off of what you owe the state. So then you'd only owe $2,000.
So in other words, the difference between a tax deduction, that lowers how much you get taxed on, but a tax credit, that's dollar for dollar right off of what you owe in taxes. So what are some of the examples? We already have tax deductions for what?
Well, tax credits.
Tax credits.
Well, I think one of the most interesting ones is that if I were to buy an electric car,
right,
and if I made enough money, I could actually take off up to $6,000 off of what I owe the state. I don't owe the state $6,000, but if I did, I could take off $6,000.
That's not a deduction. That's a tax credit. All right, so let me see if I understand this. Colorado, by law right now, will allow you to deduct up to $6,000
tax credit.
Credit for $6,000. Take it off of your taxes of what you owe, a tax credit, for a car, but not a penny for a scholarship organization to help kids with their education.
Correct.
All right.
That's correct.
You put together an interesting little video. I liked it because it's hard to get that simple concept through, which is if we treat kids like we treat electric cars, we'll have better education and these kids will have more choices. So I tell you what, let's run this little video. I think you'll like it.
Isabella is failing at her public school. There's a private school where she would do better, but her family can't afford it. There are scholarships for kids like Isabella, but demand is high and funds are limited. Isabella is out of luck. But there is a way people can help Isabella. Imagine if the state offered a tax incentive to help kids like her. Taxpayers would get credit for up to half of their state tax bill when they donate to organizations that provide K-12 scholarships. For example, someone who owed $1,000 in state taxes makes a $500 scholarship donation. The $500 they would have paid the state instead goes towards scholarships. Having such a policy means everyone comes out ahead. Isabella gets an education that fits her better. Taxpayers can feel good about making a huge impact in the lives of kids like Isabella, and public schools have more money left over for each of their students. That's because Isabella's scholarship costs less, and the state gets to keep the change. Every year, more and more states are putting this system in place. It's supported by both Democrats and Republicans. Colorado should be next.
Love the idea. The idea is to treat kids like you treat a Prius. Give them a tax credit so they can improve the world as well. When they said when they said it helps the public school as well. Help me understand that. I understand if I got a tax bill and it's $2,000, if I give a couple grand to these organizations, I can lower that. And my wallet doesn't know the difference if the money's going to the government or to an organization to help kids. So I'd likely do that. That would make me feel good. Why is it good for public schools?
Well, it would save the state money, because if a scholarship is worth, let's say, $3,000, and it depends on how the program's written for the state of Colorado, but if it's worth $3,000, but let's say the state's spending about for per pupil revenue, which is only a portion of the money spent on kids in public schools, but if they're spending about $6,500, and now all of a sudden $3,000 is being spent because there is less tax money there because you've received a credit, the state has saved $3,500. They're not educating that child.
So in other words, the savings is because you take Isabella out of the government school, she ends up going to a private school. The part of that money isn't paid by taxpayers. It comes through these charitable organizations, but the state doesn't have to pay for Isabella, which costs a lot more. So it saves the state more money in public schools to help kids in public school, more money for Isabella, and taxpayers get to choose if they want to do this. Other states are doing it. Is it working?
Yes, there are 12 states right now. There are 15 programs in 12 states, and just recently this year Alabama passed it. The year before, 4 states passed it. So it's growing. Republicans and Democrats support it. It's a great win for everybody.
Let's see if I got this. Alabama can do this. Alabama can do this, but Colorado hasn't put their kids as far ahead as a Prius. What needs to happen in order to make this a reality?
Well, it needs to be a piece of legislation, and so of course our legislature and our governor would have to be on board for such a program. But I think before that, the public needs to understand it, and the public needs to ask for it.
People need to learn more about this. You've got a website. I want to make sure people understand. What's at the website?
On the website, we have this video. We have another video with real stories of real kids. And then we have Ben DeGro's paper on the topic that outlines a wonderful program for Colorado.
What are you hoping to do with all this? So you got the website, people are watching this video, people are understanding at least the concept of what tax credits are. How real is it that Colorado will move? I mean, I'm trying to look back 20 years. When Roy Romer, a Democrat, signed that bill for charter schools, did he have any idea that 13% of the kids a couple decades later would be using it? Give me some insight.
Well, we're hoping that legislators, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, will just face the facts and give kids more choices, give families some help. There isn't time to wait till the public schools improve enough to help all these kids.
Just like 20 years ago, it was Democrats who led the charge for education reform, and we hope it happens here. Thank you so much. So it's coloradokidswin.org. Check it out. I think you're going to love it.